So I'm Ben Roundtree. It's nice to be speaking in English. I do more talking in front of people in German, and somehow I think that's a little more comfortable than speaking English. But anyhow, I've been married to my wife, Erin, for 18 years. We have 2 teenage daughters. They are 16 and 14, and our younger daughter, Emily, has Charge syndrome. I served on the staff at McLean Bible Church in the DC area for 18 years, and that was the coolest job I've ever heard of for somebody like me. I loved it, and then the Lord started calling us 7 years ago. Started giving us an inkling that there was something going with us in Germany, and the Lord's call became clear about 4 years ago in 2016, and then we now have been in our village of Rothenberg in the Black Forest of Germany for 2.5 years. So German culture, like a lot of Europe, is secular, post-Christian, even pre-Christian, is a pretty decent description of German culture these days. And our mission involves using music to connect with people, to share the gospel in a natural way, without preaching or throwing up barriers. And so I'll talk about the 3 different things. I'll talk about 3 of the things we do today. My wife Erin and I have been ringing handbells for 20 years together. In fact, that's actually how we became friends, but that's another story. And in our performances, we tell our story. We talk about life with Emily, and we're open, and I think God then shines through our weakness, through our vulnerability, through that. And at least in Europe, nobody can argue with your story. When you tell what God's done in you, they may not be ready to hear a sermon from you, but they're very open. So I'd like to show you a video of Erin and me playing. We start off in our home, in our the perfect home that God prepared for us to have a room where we can practice bells. And we'll start with a great German hymn from 1776, Großer Gott, wir loben dich. It's one of the greatest German hymns. And we'll do a couple of things from our Advent program last year, and then one of the more creative things we've tried doing from our church in Virginia before we left. So here's some handbells. sometimes when it's music stuff, it's easier to just show a video and let you experience a little bit of the thing that it is that we get to do. So the next part of our work, having a daughter with a disability, has opened lots of opportunities to connect with families, to reach out to people officially and unofficially, and whether it's just introducing myself in concerts and saying I have a daughter with a disability. Some people come up and afterwards and say, "I'm glad you were so open about that." And if you knew Emily, you wouldn't be surprised that I would want to share about her because she's great. Someday she'll make it to an ACT thing and you can all meet her. But I was in Ukraine on a musical trip when I met one of the most remarkable people I know. Zoriana is a neonatologist. She became a believer as an adult and was looking around trying to figure out what she should do to serve the Lord. And so she founded a ministry in Rivne that reaches out to families and children and parents of children with disabilities. And so because I was there doing a music thing, and she knew I had a daughter with a disability, we got connected. And now the Liya Christian Ministry, which I've been a part of musically, is also doing disability work there. And so my family, without me this summer, made a trip there. My wife, who doesn't like to talk in front of people, has given a couple of talks now to parents of children with disabilities, just talking about her experience and talking about our experience as a family. By the way, hi Erin, she's watching on video from Germany, and probably Elise also. And so special needs ministry, it's something that we're ready to do. It's not an official plan, but it wasn't an official plan to start out with either. That was God's plan. So the last part of what I do in the already existing ministry that we joined is called Eurobrass. And Germany has a strong tradition of brass playing in churches. There are about 5,000 brass choirs that play in the Protestant churches in Germany. It's just woven into the fabric of the culture, and they're called Posaunenchor, and which literally means trombone choir, but it's Martin Luther's fault because he said when the last trumpet is going to sound, he called it a trombone. So as a trombone player, that actually makes me happy. But so for over 40 years, Eurobrass has been using professional classical and sacred music to share the gospel, to encourage the church, and to demonstrate how believer artists on a 3.5-week tour can come together, all 12 of us, and not just come together musically, but come together spiritually and personally. And as believers with differing artistic ideas, it's not always easy to do. But I think that's what we ought to do as believers, is be able to work together artistically and personally. And so that's one of the biggest testimonies of Eurobrass from my perspective. But I'm a part of the leadership team of Eurobrass together with Catherine Cheney, another ACT department. We moved to Germany at the same time about 2.5 years ago. And so she and I will gradually take over the running and the leading of the tour. And then as a result of being involved in Eurobrass, I go and work with church brass choirs. And I'll do workshops or weekends or retreats with them, and I'll train them musically, help them to use their gifts better to glorify God. And then there's spiritual training that's just sort of a natural outflowing of how I do rehearsals and how I've learned to do rehearsals. And so it's a natural thing that just sort of flows out. So three conversations I had over the last 1.5 years sort of sum up for me the impact of Eurobrass and of the kind of work that we're doing with concerts. The first was feedback I got from Charlie, a guy who lives in our village. He's active in the brass choir. He loves the Lord. As soon as he retired, he went to do mission trips in Lesotho, inside South Africa, and that's where he is now. But he, after coming to a Eurobrass concert this summer, he couldn't stop talking about how the message and the music and everything worked together to just clearly communicate the gospel. We don't get up there and preach. There's no invitation. There's no altar call. That would be not appropriate in German culture. But hearing from Charlie, it clearly is a great, strong, powerful presentation of the gospel. The next guy, I'll call upset guy. He wrote us an angry email after a Eurobrass concert, and he was upset with something we had said and how he had done it. And I looked him up before I wrote back, and he had a brass ensemble that said their goal is to glorify God with brass music. I thought, that's great. What's his problem with us? But what he said to us was a sacred brass ensemble should only play music to glorify God, but not to spread the gospel. Shouldn't be used for evangelism. And so we'll agree to disagree on that, and I'll take that as the offense of the gospel, and I'm good with that. And then the other guy is Marcus, a guy I sit next to in a wind orchestra in Germany, a secular group. He is not a believer, but he came to our concert, and for the next several days, when I saw him later in the fall, he just couldn't stop talking about something just about the concert, and I don't think he had the words to say it because he's not a believer, but he just kept saying it was great and it was, something, and so that led to continued conversations with him, and so those are the kind of impacts. Germany is not, and Europe is not. It's not a place where you're going to get 300 people to check, I decided to follow Jesus today on a card. It's harder and different work than that, and so, but music is the way to break it down. So I'll finish with a video. It's got two arrangements. This will be Eurobrass performing in concerts. 2 arrangements of things you're likely to know, and then the last one is a congregational version of Großer Gott, wir loben dich. And that's from 2 different concerts we did in the former East Germany this summer. And so when we were there, most of the people you see in the audience were faithful to the Lord during the Soviet times, during the times when they were disadvantaged for being believers and for declaring their faith. And so I think it's great. Saturday is the 30th anniversary of the Berlin Wall miraculously opening. And so these are some of the people that have benefited from that. So I'll finish with some brass music.